Hi, I'm Ruth. My life was perfect, and I never wanted for anything. Mom and Dad owned a successful company and were perfect parents. They loved me and always said that nothing was more important than family. Our home was a happy place full of love. There was something that kept ruining my mood, though, or rather someone. It was my classmate, Dwight. That guy was nastier than broccoli, and for some reason he wouldn't leave me alone. Hey, Ruth, do you know the difference between you and pizza? I'm sure you're about to tell me. When I look at pizza, I don't want to barf. What a moron. One fateful day, Dwight and his friends were waiting for me after classes. I didn't want to deal with them, so I started running as soon as I saw those bullies. They chased after me, so I hid at a cemetery. Dwight and his gang ran past me. I decided to take a shortcut through the cemetery because I didn't want to run into them again. I'd never been chicken, but that place gave me goosebumps. It was creepy. And then my eyes fell on one of the monuments. I read the name on it, Madison Taylor. It sent shivers down my spine. Taylor was my surname. But the weirdest thing was that there was a photo of a girl that looked a lot like me next to it. That freaked me out and I ran home. Of course, I asked my parents if they knew who Madison Taylor was. They said that they had no idea who I was talking about. However, they seemed on edge. Mom and Dad were definitely hiding something. The next day at school, all the students were discussing a robbery. It turned out that someone had broken into a jewelry store the night before. The mysterious robber had left no evidence at the crime scene, and the police were in a frenzy. Dwight wouldn't shut up about it. He fancied himself a young Sherlock Holmes and bragged that he would solve the case in no time. I'll show the detectives how it's done. He was so caught up in it that he forgot all about me. Hallelujah, finally. That was just the beginning. When I got home after school, I saw my parents talking to an old woman. We have guests? Mom and Dad hesitated at first, but then admitted that the old woman was my grandmother. What? I immediately bombarded them with questions. Why had they hidden her from me, and why had Grandma come over now? But Mom interrupted me and coldly said that was grown-up business. Go to your room and don't bother us. I went to my room wondering what that was all about. My parents always said that relatives should be there for each other. How come I'd never seen Grandma then? My parents refused to explain anything even after she'd left. I had to get to the bottom of it, though. I found Granny's address and Mom's phone and was on my way. Imagine my surprise when I found out she lived in a decrepit house in a terrible neighborhood. I had been surrounded by luxury my whole life and never wanted for money. It made my blood boil that my parents did nothing to help my grandma. I knocked on her door. Grandma seemed happy to see me and invited me in. Ruth, sweetie, I came to your parents because I wanted to know the truth, but your parents wouldn't let me talk to you. She sighed heavily and confessed that my parents had broken off all contact with her after my older sister died. Wait, what? I had a sister? Yes, you were very young and probably don't remember Madison. Madison Taylor. It must have been her monument I had seen. Why did my parents hide the truth from me? My legs gave way and tears streamed down my face, but I still insisted Grandma tell me everything. Your mom and dad were very young when they had Madison. They lived in a bad neighborhood and dreamed of escaping poverty. I was raising Madison so they could work. My grandma could not constantly watch over her granddaughter either, so my sister often sneaked out and quickly fell in with a bad crowd. In a few years, our parents got rich, moved to a nice house, and had me. By that time, Madison got mixed up in some really bad stuff. When you were 5 and she was 16, Madison died. Now that I had thought about it, I remembered cops coming to our house and talking about someone's death. I was a kid and didn't understand anything back then. My parents never talked about it and made sure I wouldn't see Grandma. It was quite a shock. I talked with Grandma till nightfall and then went home, pissed off at my parents. When I was walking past the cemetery, I saw a mysterious silhouette by my sister's monument. Even though I was scared, my curiosity got the better of me. I hid behind a tombstone and watched that figure. They quickly disappeared and I realized that someone was next to me. Dwight! You scared the hell out of me! What are you doing here? I'm trying to catch that robber. What about you? I don't know what came over me. The words just came pouring out of me. I told my classmate about everything that had happened to me and I even showed him my sister's monument. Someone was just here, but I didn't see them clearly. Dwight was ecstatic and said he would help me. Okay, but only if you promise not to bully me anymore. Deal. When I got home, I blew up at my parents for feeding me lies my whole life. They admitted Grandma had told me the truth. It turned out they blamed her for what happened. Your grandmother had troubles with the law. It was her fault Madison fell in with a bad crowd. I didn't believe them and felt disappointed. My parents had always been my role models, but they treated my sister and grandma terribly. The next morning at school, Dwight told me another store had been robbed at night. The police didn't catch the criminal yet again, but they did find out the mysterious robber was a woman. Dad said my grandma was a criminal. I didn't want to believe it was her, but could she be responsible for all those robberies? I shared my suspicions with Dwight, and he came up with a plan. We'll hide by your grandma's house and watch her. Typical. Is that the best plan you've got, oh great detective? You have any better ideas? I didn't. So we went to grandma's house after school. Before we could hide, she walked out of the house and went somewhere. We followed her and saw her walk into a mall. She picked out a lot of clothes. I thought she was buying them for someone younger than her, except she wasn't buying them. Instead of paying, she put a piece of clothing in another customer's purse. The unsuspecting woman tried to leave the store while my grandma followed her. Of course, the alarm went off. The security guards thought the woman was more likely to be a shoplifter than a nice old lady. They searched her and found the stolen item in her purse. I didn't steal anything. This is a mistake. Save your excuses for the police. While the guards were searching that woman, Granny had already left. Wow, she really was a criminal. Why would she steal teen girls' clothes, though? I wanted to catch up to her and make her pay for everything, but Dwight stopped me. This isn't that serious. Let's catch her red-handed when she commits a bigger crime and turn her in then. I agreed and went home. On the way there, I came to the cemetery and sat by Madison's monument. Even though I hadn't really known my sister, I felt like we were connected. I wish you were here. I'm sure we'd get along. I wiped away a tear and suddenly heard someone's angry voice behind me. Who are you and what are you doing here? I turned around and saw a girl that looked terribly familiar. I got the shock of a lifetime. It was my sister. Madison? How is this possible? After I made sure Madison wasn't a ghost, I burst into tears and threw my arms around her. I'm Ruth, your sister. She was as confused as I was. We hugged for a while and then went to a cafe to talk. You probably have a lot of questions. I don't even know where to start. I know you're surprised I'm alive. We ordered coffee and my sister told me her story. Living with our grandmother hadn't been easy for her. She really had been a bad influence on Madison and encouraged her to break the law. Granny used to shoplift and blame everything on Madison to avoid punishment. One day, Granny got so greedy she stole a large sum. As usual, framed Madison. I could have ended up in jail, so I had to fake my death and flee to Venezuela. Our parents knew about it and helped me fool the police. They even put up this fake monument. Now, years later, Madison came back, hoping that everyone had long forgotten about her. She was a conservator now. I couldn't believe my family had so many skeletons in its closet. It was like I'd been living in an imaginary magical land and had only just opened my eyes to a harsh reality. Still, I was over the moon. I met my sister and invited her over. I don't think that's a good idea, Ruth. It's not that I'm holding a grudge against our parents, but I'll never forget how easily they shipped me off to Grandma's. Don't worry though, you're my younger sister and I want to get to know you. I wasn't going to let my parents get away with their lies. As soon as I got home, I went ballistic and told them I'd met Madison, who was very much alive. Mom and Dad turned white as snow when they heard that. Ruth, sweetheart, stay away from your sister. She isn't someone you should grow close to. Madison isn't who she claims to be. Enough, I'm not buying your lies anymore. I stormed away to my room and slammed the door behind me. Dwight called me and told me his brilliant plan. Expensive jewelry had just been delivered to a salon nearby. My classmate was sure the mysterious robber would come for it that night. If your grandmother is the one behind those robberies, then we will track her down, turn her into the police, and become famous. I'll be waiting for you at the salon in an hour. Are you asking me out on a date? Why not? I agreed. When it got dark, I sneaked out of my room and went to that jewelry salon. Dwight was already waiting for me behind a hedge nearby. I crouched down next to him to keep an eye on the door to the salon. It was pretty boring, so we got to talking. He made me laugh and gave me advice on how to get on with my parents and found sister. I never thought I'd say that, but Dwight wasn't a bad guy. Who are you and what have you done with the real Dwight? What are you talking about? Well, you used to bully me. I think I've always liked you but didn't know how to get you to notice me. We both smiled shyly, and then the salon's alarm system went off. Someone walked out of it and ran towards the cemetery. All we saw was a dark silhouette. Let's follow them. We need to hurry. We ran after the robber. They spent a few minutes by Madison's monument and then went to my grandmother's house. We couldn't see the robber's face in the dark, but when they ran under a street light, we saw that they were wearing the clothes my grandma had stolen. Gotcha. Just in case, I took a photo of her and then called the police and told them everything. So the criminal was arrested, and we even got interviewed by the reporters. The next day at school, Dwight and I were treated like celebrities. He finally asked me out on a real date. I'd love to, my brave Sherlock Holmes. It wouldn't be a happy ending without a family reunion. My parents called me and said that Madison came over to make up and say goodbye. She had apparently decided to move to another city. I immediately rushed home to see her off. I was in for a surprise. For some reason, the cops were handcuffing my parents when I arrived. Hey, how dare they ruin my happy ending? I came to the police station and found out that my grandmother had been released. turned out she had an ironclad alibi for the night of the robbery. Besides, the cops hadn't found any of the stolen jewelry at her house. My parents had been arrested after a tip-off from someone that wished to stay anonymous. My head was spinning. The officer let me talk to Mom and Dad, and they told me what had happened. Madison said she wasn't angry at us anymore and even gave me a precious ring as a parting gift. We reconciled before she left, and then we realized she had left her bag at our place. My parents wanted to bring it to her, but at that moment the police burst into their house and arrested them. The cops found the clothes that the criminal had worn on the night of the robbery in Madison's bag. Moreover, Mom was wearing one of the rings that had been stolen. It's no wonder the cops arrested them on sight. I can't believe it. Madison set you up. We warned you she's not to be trusted. Your grandmother must have helped her set us up. I had come to the same conclusion and was furious with myself. How could I be so gullible? I promised my parents I would prove their innocence and ran out into the street. Dwight was already waiting for me there. He found out about what happened and came running to the station. The only way to get my parents out of jail is to find Madison and the stolen jewelry. But they could be anywhere. Follow me. I think I know where to find them. Dwight ran to the cemetery. He reminded me that someone had been hanging around Madison's monument. He was a good detective after all. When we arrived, we saw my grandma and sister pulling jewelry out of a hiding place by Madison's fake grave and putting it in bags. Dwight and I hid and took pictures of them. My plan worked. We taught your moronic parents a lesson, and now we can lie low in Venezuela and live happy ever after. I feel sorry for Ruth. She seemed like a nice girl. Oh, spare me your sentimentality. Your parents have always loved Ruth more. You should hate her. Hurry up or we'll miss our plane. Okay, I get it. They got into a taxi and drove away. I sent the video to the police. They intercepted Grandma and Madison at the airport and arrested them. Later, my sister admitted that she had been robbing stores while our grandma helped her cover her tracks. The real criminals went to prison and my parents were cleared of all charges and released. They were infinitely grateful to me for my help and immediately pulled me into a bear hug. Ruth, thank you. You saved our family. But I pulled away from Mom and Dad and said with a frown that I was disappointed in them. Grandma chose her path herself, but Madison is like this because of you. You knew perfectly well that Grandma was a criminal, but you still let her babysit your daughter so that you could focus on your careers. I'm sorry, but this doesn't feel like a victory to me. Turned out even perfect families can have skeletons hidden in their closets. I found out the unpleasant truth about my parents, and now I don't know if I will ever be able to forgive them. On a more positive note, my detective Dwight turned out to be a cool guy, even though at first he seemed like the worst bully ever. We became an item and sometimes visit my sister in prison together. I hope Madison has learned her lesson and will one day turn over a new leaf. How would you react if you found out you had a sibling your parents hid from you? Tell me in the comments down below. Please like this video and subscribe to the private diary. That would really help the channel.